Welcome to the AI Brief from the YPO Technology Network. I'm Stephen Forte. Something has gone quietly upside down in the AI story, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Here's what I will give you in the next 8 minutes. The government project that proves these models can now do the impossible. The two numbers that prove almost nobody is getting value from them anyway. And the $2.5 billion bet the smartest vendors just placed that tells you exactly where your real problem lives. Here is the lens for today. For 3 years, the entire AI conversation has been about capability. Is the model smart enough? Is it accurate enough? Will the next version finally be good enough to trust? That question is now largely settled and settled in the machine's favor. And it turns out to have been the wrong question all along. Your bottleneck was never the model. It is the mile between the model and your business. And this week, that mile got a price tag. Start with the proof that capability is no longer the constraint, because it is genuinely startling. The government of Alberta, the Canadian province, not a tech company, pointed roughly 50 Claude code agents at its entire code base. Claude Code, for the non-engineers, is Anthropic's tool that lets its AI models read and write software on their own. Anthropic is the lab behind the Claude models. Those agents scanned 466 million lines of code across 3,400 repositories, covering about 1,280 applications for 27 provincial ministries, checking roughly 95 security controls on each one. The whole sweep took 20 hours. By hand, the province estimated the same work would have taken 6.5 years. Sit with those two numbers next to each other. 6.5 years, 20 hours. That is not an improvement. That is a fire department that can inspect every building in the province before lunch. And one legacy portal in that stack, a subsidy system hand-coded in Java 25 years ago that took 5 months to build the first time, could reportedly be rebuilt now in 4 to 5 days. So the machine can do the impossible, which raises the only question that matters for you. If the capability is this good, why is almost nobody getting rich off it? Now, the two numbers that should be taped to your monitor. MIT this year found that 95% of enterprise generative AI pilots deliver no measurable impact on profit and loss. None. And a survey published through the National Bureau of Economic Research, NBER, the nonpartisan research group whose data the Federal Reserve actually watches, polled more than 6,000 senior executives across the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, and Australia. Roughly 90% reported no measurable productivity gain from AI over the last 3 years. Read those together and the picture is almost absurd. The capability curve went vertical, the results curve stayed flat on the floor. We have the most powerful business technology in a generation, and 9 out of 10 of the people who run companies cannot find it in their numbers. That space between what the technology can do and what companies actually get from it has a name. It is the deployment gap. And here is the part that turns it from a think piece into a Thursday news story. This week, the deployment gap got a price tag, and the people who set the price are the ones with the best information in the business. Microsoft announced it is committing $2.5 billion and 6,000 of its own engineers to a new unit called Frontier Company, whose entire job is to move into customer companies and build, deploy, and run their AI systems for them, not sell them software. Move in. The industry term is forward deployed engineering. You send your own technical people to live inside the customer's operations until the thing actually works. The way IBM's engineers practically had a desk in your data center in the mainframe era. Microsoft named its first customers: the London Stock Exchange Group, Land O'Lakes, Unilever, Novo Nordisk. And it is not alone. Amazon put $1 billion behind the same idea 2 days earlier. Anthropic and OpenAI both stood up embedded engineering teams back in May. Here is my read. When 4 of the most sophisticated technology companies on earth independently decide in the same season to spend billions putting their own humans inside your building, they are telling you something they have learned the expensive way. The software does not deploy itself. The bottleneck is not the model is done. The bottleneck is the translation of that model into your messy, specific, regulated, politically complicated business. And that translation, it turns out, still runs on people. Give Microsoft real credit for the honesty of that, and I mean it. A software company whose entire $100 billion business model is the software scales without us just spent $2.5 billion admitting that for AI, it does not. That is a rare and expensive confession. Even the company spending the most on raw capability has conceded that spending on capability is not the same as getting value, which incidentally is what Mark Zuckerberg told his own staff last week when he admitted the agents were behind schedule. Now, you might be hearing this and reaching for your checkbook. Great. I will just hire the embedded team and buy my way across the gap. Here is why that is only half the answer, and the more expensive half if you get it wrong. A Harvard Business Review essay this month by David DeCramer named the actual failure mode, and he calls it the urgency trap. The 95% of pilots that die do not die because the model was too weak. They die because leaders reach for the nearest painful problem, wire an AI to it, and call that a strategy, when it is really just a faster way to do something that never mattered much. The failure, he argues, is a failure of executive thinking, not of technology. You cannot fully outsource that to a forward deployed engineer because the engineer can build anything and has no idea which thing is worth building. That part is your job. The counterexample is worth naming because someone is doing it right. Franklin Templeton, the asset manager that runs about $1.5 trillion, was written up this month for a discipline it calls co-pilot, not autopilot. Every high-stakes decision keeps a human in the loop by design. They ran one internal tool as a real pilot, proved it cut the busy work, and only then scaled it. And the detail that tells you they are serious, their CEO, Jenny Johnson, personally builds AI agents and writes code with these tools. So her judgment about what is real stays calibrated to what the technology actually does. That is what closing the gap looks like from the top, not a bigger budget. A named philosophy and a leader who has touched the thing. Let me make it concrete. Picture a $200 million services firm, the kind many of you run. Over the last 18 months, it has run 11 AI pilots. Everyone demoed beautifully. 0 are in production. That CEO is not behind on technology. The technology works. That CEO is living the 95%, and the honest name for 11 pilots and no production is not a strategy. It is a hobby. The next dollar can fund pilot number 12, or it can go to dragging exactly one of those 11 all the way across the gap into daily use with a number attached. Only one of those is a plan. If I were sitting in your seat this quarter, I would do 3 things. First, before you fund another pilot, run every AI idea through one filter, not is this painful, but if this worked perfectly, would it move a number the board cares about? That single question kills most of the 95% before they waste a year. Second, take exactly one initiative that already half works and resource it to completion. A named owner, a deadline, a metric, and the boring change management work of getting humans to actually use it. The value was always in that last mile, the same way the value of your ERP system in 2015 came from the 18 months of adoption, not the license you signed. Third, if you do buy embedded help from Microsoft, Amazon, a lab, or a consultancy, hire them to close a gap you have already defined, never to tell you which gap matters. Rent the hands, keep the judgment. We have spent this week on the megawatts, the state, and the money. Today was the quietest and most important story of all. The models are ready, and most of us still are not. The gap between those two facts is the single largest source of wasted AI spending in your company right now. Your AI bottleneck was never the model. It is the distance between what the model can do and what your organization will actually let it do. And no vendor at any price can walk that mile for you. That is the YPO Tech Network AI Brief for Thursday, July 9th. I am Stephen Forte. If this was useful, send it to a fellow member. I will be back Friday with more. Until then, stay sharp.